Hello and welcome to OpenConf 2022, the interviews. And today with us we have Suzanne Daniels. Hello, Suzanne.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So we are going to have a small talk, an interview to get to know you. You are our speaker this year for OpenConf 2022. So just to begin, you are working as a developer relations lead at Backstage. Backstage is an open platform of Spotify. And what you are trying to achieve is to improve the developer experience. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your career, and how did you eventually chose to become a developer advocate? And also, could you give us a little bit of advice that you would give to a young person that would like to have a similar career path?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, folks who are watching. I'm Suzanne Daniels. I work for Spotify, indeed, leading developer relations for an open source project called Backstage, which indeed is an open platform for building developer portals. So yeah, I didn't always do this. This was not the plan. Basically, when I started out my career, developer relations was practically non-existent, or at least the word was non-existent. I started my career being a programmer, writing great software and innovative software, which is really my passion, is to try and build products and innovate and make the lives a little bit better of people. Yeah, so from there, I went more into consultancy on application platforms, application development, basically anything to do with actually putting an application to good use, as in that customers can use it and that it scales, that it uses the internet and modern marvels of technology. And from there, I helped other companies to build solutions with technology from one of the big vendors. And from there, I actually rolled into developer relations. And this is a bit how it works. You interact with the community, and I really like that. I like teaching people things. I like changing the mindset of people just a little bit, because modern day software development is confusing. There's a lot of new technologies, buzzwords. What should you invest in? Your time. What should you learn? What is those technology? What is behind that technology? How can you actually use it? And by having all these conversations with partners and customers of the company I worked for, yeah, that grew more and more into community. And then when a role opened up, leading DevRel, yeah, that was basically a really, really logical next step for me. And from there, yeah, I wanted more, and I wanted to work in open source, and I ended up at Spotify working for this Backstage project, which is super awesome. And I really would not have thought doing this if you would ask me 5 years ago. But now DevRel, or developer relations and advocacy, is much more known. People notice those advocates like speaking at the conferences or producing videos, writing content, doing marketing. And all these elements basically make up DevRel. So there is no like one way to do DevRel. It encompasses many, many things if you do it right. And that can be confusing if you want to determine how to start your career as a, for instance, developer advocate. And I think that there's one big thing that you need to have in your personality or your skill set. It's being eager to learn. Learn about technology, learn about all the aspects of developer advocacy, like marketing, the technology part, but also the human part. And that is where you will benefit a lot. Being able to understand how communities work, what developers actually need, and how you can translate whatever fluffy business language you have into something that is useful for a developer to get started right away and change their company with the technology or the vendor or the platform or whatever you represent at that point. So that's basically my advice: stay curious, folks. And it's I was talking to somebody in DevRel like earlier today, and the person told me, yeah, it's about like being overly curious about things and wanting to share that with the others, what you learned. And yeah, I think that it's the nail on the head.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yes, indeed. Very interesting, and a very interesting position. Okay, when I read it, I was amazed. Okay, that this is something that we provide to the communities of today. So, as a woman now in tech, okay, do you believe that there's need for more women in the field? And why do you think that many young women are reluctant to consider any studying in STEM? And also, can you give us some ideas how to achieve greater diversity and participation for women in technological conferences as OpenConf, as we see this as a challenge? Um,
Yeah, I was trying not to shout yes, yes. Of course, we need much more women in tech. We need as much as diverse perspectives as we can in technology, and it's super important. Why? Because if you want to build the best software out there, you need to have these different viewpoints in there. You need these different perspectives, these nuances, but also the different backgrounds people bring. Because what might sound in an application very logical for one person might not at all resonate with somebody else. And especially if you look also at things like data, AI, it's extremely important to get those viewpoints in there, to make sure that we all be the best we can be and learn from each other, but also make sure that like the software represents that as well. So yeah, it's super important. One big thing is representation. There is a lot of women working in tech. There's a lot of women in doing really great job. But yeah, it's not always that visible. And I think that visibility really helps. So, for instance, if you talk about conferences, yes, having female speakers or NBs or anyone in there representing a diverse community is already a profit. Getting them on stage, getting them to do their story is really important. And that will bring that representation. It will invite other people as well to your conference, to share knowledge, to be inspired, to say, hey, one day I want to be up that stage. And yeah, why not? If you're watching this and you think, yeah, well, I have something to share, just apply to the CFP, and that's super scary stuff. But yes, that's the point where we want to be, because that again can touch the hearts and the minds of other people who are underrepresented at this moment, and it will take a while for us to get there. But yes, those things are super important. And some other things that conferences can do, for instance, is make sure that the website's up to date, that also represents a diverse community. So if I go to a conference and I look at the pictures and there's only white middle-aged male on the pictures, for me it motivates me to maybe go there because I'm different. But for others, it might be scary. It might be putting them off, and rightfully so. So if you want to change things, you like these imagery, the language that you use in your CFP, for instance, the help that you can offer. Like, are you a well-organized conference? Like really, like embracing those speakers? That really helps. And as a matter of fact, I know you do. So that part is really really well, because feeling welcome and feeling needed, and it's so important. It's basically the doormat of your conference. So yes.
Yeah, thank you. We do indeed have a long way to cover, but I think we are in the correct way, in the correct path.
It's a journey. I speak regularly with conference organizers about things like a code of conduct, about the websites, about the things that they can do to attract like a more diverse speakers and also audience. And yes, there's many things, but yeah, it's a journey, and you just.
Yeah.
If you're an existing conference, especially, you have to change these things and tune them and try and find out what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah. And inspire other women to participate and be the example for them.
Yeah, and there's one thing I wanted to add there, and that is for all the people who are experienced speakers or conference organizers or very knowledgeable people in the field who are able to help other people. Please do help somebody, coach somebody, ask them like, hey, have you submitted a talk to this and this conference? Can I help you? Because that's also, it's paying it forward, right? And that's something that everybody could do. And if everybody would do that for one person, like our whole speaker landscape for next year would be vastly different.
Yeah. Thank you. So my next question is about open source. So you work at an open source project, Backstage. So now, how do you see the mind shift of corporations towards adopting and contributing to open source? Now that you are working in an open source project.
Yeah, it's that's also a journey, and you see that in general that companies are growing up there in the way that they approach open source. They embrace open source, and a lot of companies are now in the phase like, hey, how can I actually contribute back to those communities, contribute back to those open source projects, either by funding, either by investing engineering time, by contributing back to the project. And that is a great place to be in. Yes, that comes with a lot of learnings, and it also brings like a lot of questions. I think it's a good time for open source. Sure, there's enough examples of things going wrong, but at least we are discussing these things, and people are trying to really learn from that. Most companies are learning from that, because what we know now is that it doesn't matter what application you write, somewhere down the line you depend on open source, and that is that person sitting somewhere writing a code, having a bad day, and making a typo, and that like dilutes your whole application environment with something bad. Stuff breaks. Yeah, it's important that we invest time in there, and a lot of companies do that. So yeah, that's a super positive. Like for instance, what we see now around Backstage is that we have over 400 companies adopting the project. Not all of them are publicly raising their hands yet, but we know that it's more than 400 at this moment. And you see that a lot of the contributions come from outside Spotify nowadays, and everybody contributing, like that's precious engineering time for most of the people. For some company they work for, maybe one of those 400 adopters, maybe a company wanting to create a plugin around it to help enrich the platform with their service so that other people can use it. So it's you see those investments, and that's really super cool to see. If a company walks towards you and says, hey, we have a few engineers, want to like purpose them to your project. How can we help? What can we do? How can we get started? Can we get involved with the maintainers and help you with this awesome project? And that's super great.
Okay, and we hope that others will follow.
I hope that inspires, because in the end of the day, we all depend on it, and besides, it's super fun for your engineers to contribute to open source. Yeah, it's super great to be interacting with communities and with projects and seeing your work out there. And basically, GitHub is the new LinkedIn for like people looking for another job, showcasing their work. So yeah, that really helps.
So this year, you are one of our speakers at OpenConf. So what are your thoughts about your participation? And if you could give us a short insight also of the topic that you will be presenting in OpenConf.
Yeah, first of all, I'm super happy that I got selected with my talk. I was viewing like the conferences, and I always look at some things like, hey, what area is this? What kind of audience is there? What companies are around? What speakers would be there? And this really ticked a lot of boxes for me to submit my talk. So I'm super happy that it got accepted. My talk will be about how people can improve their developer experience at their organization using an open source platform for building a developer portal. So I'm going to explain a little bit about what that actually is. Well, hint, spoiler, maybe, it's Backstage on backstage.io. But don't look yet because I still have to do the talk. And why people should invest in developer experience, because investing in developer experience, especially in these times, whether you're growing your company or shrinking the company, whether you work with monoliths or microservices, that all doesn't really matter. What does matter is that you have happy developers in your company, that you're all happy engineers, and that developing software is not too confusing, not frustrating. It should be a good experience because it's people work. And the happier people are, the better their work is. And that's why we have this super cool tagline, which says, happy developers make happy code. But it's true. So yeah, that's what my talk is about. And yeah, if you like the topic or are interested in developer experience or how Spotify solved that problem, join my session.
Yeah, we are happy to have you. We are welcome that you will be with us to give your speech. Thank you very much for the interview, for your thoughts, for everything that you have shared with us today. And for everyone, join OpenConf live 2nd of December. We will have Suzanne with us with her speech about the developer experience, how we can make it fun. Thank you very much. Thank you, Suzanne.